Okay, people, today we're going to take a quick look at the Four Horsemen Mythic Legion, Skeleton Legion Builder 2, and Valiant Knight. Holy Night. That's right! I discovered a new toy line that nobody else has ever heard of before. Mythic Legions, Four Horsemen. I know, Mythic Legions has its following. I've always admired it from afar, but man is it hard to keep up with if you're not hardcore into the line. But I'll be attending Legions Con next month, and they said one of the prerequisites was knowing something about Mythic Legions, having some hands-on with the action figure. No, they didn't say that. They said, hey, come on out. It's not just about Mythic Legions, but to get you started, to get you a little refresher, to get a crash course in Mythic Legions, let's send you the Skeleton and the Knight. It's not the package, it's the curve of my background here. It just keeps wanting to knock it over. But from what I understand, the Skeleton and Knight are kind of refreshes. They're updating some things with their figures. Not that the old was bad. In fact, well, I have this one. I think I have a couple more around the house somewhere, but this is the one that jumped out at me. Plus, it'll be a nice comparison to this. Looking at the packages, I think this is the standard Mythic Legions. You have the clamshell, and then the back is just kind of flipped under that. So if you really, really want to, you can just pull this, slides out, and then you have access to the figure. You can read the card, you can look at the artwork, use it as a background, and then afterwards you can put it all back in and hang it on your wall if that's the way you want to display it. I just spoiled the unboxing part of this review, so I guess I can skip that part. Look at this artwork though. Holy moly, the fire coming up the ground, the demons, the dragons, the skulls. That is just, I want action figures of all these actually. Look at that. And then a big old dragon, and then a flying skull in, and there's somebody back there in the background. Oh, y'all are gonna hate me because I don't know names and stuff. That artwork behind the figure is the same on both packages, but the backs are different. This is the Knight, this is the Skeleton. There's the story for the Skeleton if you want to pause that, and then there's the Knight story. Down on the bottom, there's the legalese, the barcode, the warning, choking hazard, small parts, don't put the fantasy action figures in your mouth. Anyway, let's get these, well, more open. We're gonna start with the Knight. Let's see what's going on here. Okay, some things not so surprising in the best possible way, but also some surprises, some things that caught me off guard. First off, the sculpt and paints are beautiful, which is the not so surprising part. Because like I said, I've admired Mythic Legions from afar for a long, long time, and even in pictures, they are downright amazing. And like I showed, I have one or two and have seen some in person, but having this one in hand, there's just something here doing it for me. Maybe it's the darker color scheme compared to the one I have. This one's all bright and happy. Nothing wrong with that. I just think of this as, you know, the do-good hero type. Yon fair maiden is in peril. Here I come, dear. This guy seems to not mind getting down and dirty. Again, I'm just getting that from the base armor itself, because you get in close and there's a griminess, a grunginess, a dirtiness. And everybody knows I love rivets and layers, and there's some layers and there's some rivets, some gold banding, some chainmail underneath, rivet layer, rivet layer, rivet layer, buckle, buckle, leather. Because I also love it when buttons and buckles are painted too, and man, that just pops out while blending into the overall piece. It looks like a set of armor that's meant to go together. Also little flourishes of gold in places there, and like I showed, that banding around on the elbow and the top of the glove, or well, I guess the gauntlet, the bracer, the armor piece that goes on a Knight figure. Then the gold catches back up here at the top for where the helmet is supposed to move. There's no articulation to this, no face under, but that's okay. That makes it even more mysterious. Another little piece of leather with a buckle on it. That's also there on the side and on the back, and down here on the shin covers, and on the inside. You kidding me? This flappy piece covering the crotch, which itself is a awesome sculpt. Look at that. But that's covering up the inner thighs. So the only way you're gonna see these buckles and leather pieces here and here is if you turn it around and actually look for them. Well, okay, in the grand scheme of things, the whole figure is in the silver color, the silver plastic. So having all these little things punched in may seem like itty-bitty details that are inconsequential, but I feel like that's what makes the figure. It ups the realism a little bit. while keeping it firmly in the fantasy world. And that's something I can appreciate. That's something I honestly really, really love. I mean, even here on the armpit, you open that up, there's actual sculpt in there, and then this leather strap going across is painted for something that is not going to be seen 90% of poses. I guarantee if I keep looking, I'm going to find something else. Oh, look at the back of the knee. Again, these knee pads, the armor pieces covering all this, come back to here, and you have to go all the way to the back to see that there's mail sculpted on the joints themselves, which they've also done at the elbows, but those are more exposed. I expected that, you know, it's the front of the figure. Most of the time the TLC is put forth there, but to do stuff on the back, oh man, that's just a love letter. That's just like, hey, customers, fans, collectors, we got your back. Literally. The kneecaps are flexy to get out of the way, and it looks like that these are flexy to get out of the way of side kicks, and then this belt is a separate piece on top of that. Oh, good grief. I just noticed that too. It peeked out when I shifted it, but I guess you could take this off if you wanted to. The leather belt, give them an all armored look, and they even painted the gold band under there. Look at that. Out of the package, you can't see it anywhere. It's covered up all the way around. Oh, am I gonna... Yep, there it is. Mythic Legions is blowing my mind, man. So yeah, flappy, separate belt piece. Get down here, the crotch cover piece is separate too, and it's pegged in the front. And the first time I pulled, it popped out. So I guess this is swappable in case they want to reuse the legs, or customizing, you can bring in other pieces, because under the head is also a flappy piece to cover up the neck joint. It doesn't want to come out, and I'm sure with some heat or something could get it out. Is that for swappability too? Going over articulation, while I have the head off, there's a big old ball joint at the top with a hinge at the top of the neck and then a swivel where it meets the body. I guess I could have lifted that up to show it. See? Swivel. You can look up that much on a helmeted head, shift forward, look down, so much freaking tilt. Skeletons. Where? Pin coming out to the shoulder, rotates around with a hinge that kicks up to there. Hinge and swivel at the elbow comes up to about 90 and then swivels in and out. The gauntlet rotates under that, I guess again to swap out parts, and then below that also rotates at the wrist with a up and down hinge on a weapon wielding hand. Love it. Dumbbell joint at the waist, so it crunches way down. Arc back, some tilt, rotation. Swivel at the hip, kicks up to here, and then way back, way more than I'm used to, and then kick out. That's as good as some Spider-Mans. Swivel at the thigh, hidden by the armor piece. Brilliant. Hinge at the knee, kicks up past 90. Then there is a swivel below the knee. I'm not quite sure that goes here, and then you can twist. Then the ankle hinges here and forward, and front facing pin for rocker. To compare to the White Knight I already had, that didn't have, well, the whole neck piece comes off. That didn't have a hinge at the top of the neck. It had the swivel at the bottom and then a ball joint into the helmet. Here's the shoulder range, but because of the way the new one's sculpted, the arms do go down nicely to the sides of the figure. I noticed on this one it sticks out a little bit. Elbow goes further, and knee also goes further. For accessories, there are 2 grip hands on the figure out of the package. Then there's 2 fists, 2 smaller grips maybe, 2 fairly splayed out hands, and then 2 clawed expressive type hands. Comes with a flail with a real chain, spikies on the pommel of it, and look at that. That's dangerous. Are the hands like, oh, not too bad. Got a little flex to them, but holds tight. I'm the sheriff around here. Not anymore. There's this very nice shield piece that adds a nice splash of color to the whole thing. The gold kind of blends in together, but then this red and the tan color coming across on the stripe and the little design work. It's not busy. It's fairly clean. It looks good. The handle is separate from it. Goes on like that. With the weapon wielding hand, you can rotate it up a little bit. Comes with this sword in the sheath, and oh, I guess that brings that color back again. That slips in very nice, doesn't fall out. Has a little clip on the back. Most of the pictures I see have the clip going into the belt, since there's some gap there. That looks pretty good. I already showed the nice helmet that was on it. There's also this alternate helmet that's a bit more pointy, a bit more aerodynamic. It brings a little bit more gold into the whole thing. While I have the head off, there's an alternate neck piece with a smaller ball on it. Is this to bring other heads in? Like, well, I don't know. I haven't opened the skeleton all the way up, but can you swap other thing. Is that for older heads? Something? Because it definitely doesn't fit the heads that come with it. Then there's some shoulder pads, which I've almost gotten used to the figure looking like this. Kind of thin, agile. But these have pegs that plug right here into the back. Takes a little bit of pushing to get them all the way seated in. But once you have them on, they look great. Now that I have them on there, I don't want to take them back off. They will shift up and out of the way of articulation. And they do have a flex to them too. But man, yeah, that adds a little bulk to it. By comparison, the skeleton is a bit more bare bones. I'll be here all night. But it's just as impressive as an action figure. Now, one thing I will point out right off the bat, because it's the first thing I noticed in the package, the arms and the legs are thick. They're larger than what I usually think of when it comes to these bones, especially compared to the rib cage and the skull, the size of this figure. Or, well, I guess the size of the person that would have these bones on the inside of their meat and muscle and around their organs and stuff. You know what I mean? But it makes for a hefty figure. It's very, very solid feeling. I had to work the hips and shoulders a bit because of the chunky detents in there, but I was confident that they would come loose without breaking because that's a lot of plastic. So yeah, it may not be anatomically correct, but it's Mythic Legion correct. And that's the whole point. But the ribs, and as I start this, I feel like I'm teaching a medical class, but here's the skull, and then the backbone coming down, the ribs and such, and the hips, and going down to the leg bones connected to the shin, and the shin bones connected to the foot bone, and the arm bones connected to the hand bones. Even have a tailbone coming down around the back, the coccyx, and then some details up in there, and some detail up in there, detail up in there, and then the paint job on top to give it an aged look. It's still bone whitish, kind of a gray tone to it. When I see skeletons like this, I usually expect like a yellowish color or brown. It's very nice. It stands out from what I'm used to. Oh, another thing is the eyes. There's nothing wrong with evil eyes on skulls, you know? It's very fantasy-like, but it surprised me when this head didn't have that. I'm a good skeleton! But because it is just bones, there's not a lot to talk about here. As you look at it on camera, what you see is what you get. Wait a second. Wait, we gonna have shoulder pads on this? What, I haven't even looked at the accessories yet. That's how I review. Going over articulation, there's a big old ball joint going up into the head, so can look up to here, can look down. None of that skin getting in the way, so very nice tilt. Maybe over here? Before I forget, the jawbone is articulated. Pin coming out to the shoulder rotates around, does try to snag right there, but not very much. Like I mentioned, there's some heavy detents to the hinge in the shoulder, but it does come up past 90. Hinge and swivel at the elbow also comes past 90, and then in and out. Swivel at the wrist with a hinge in and out. Ball joint up in the rib cage, so that gives you some crunch and a little arc back, some tilt, rotation. Pin coming out to the hip, rotates up to, how about this? It goes all the way around. And then the hinge has one big detent that you snap past, and look at that. Hinge at the knee, hidden by the kneecap that is attached to the lower leg. That's pretty cool. Goes up past 90 there too. And then again with the rotation below the knee. Hinge at the ankle, goes back, goes forward, and then front facing pin for rocker. For accessories out of the package, 2 grip hands. Then there's 2 smaller grips and or fists. I guess you could use it for both. Another set of grip hands. Actually, what is the difference here? There's bony pointing fingers, which is always menacing. Then there is this long spear, and I do mean long. Look at it compared to the size of the figure. It's pretty tall. Smooth sculpt to the spearhead with a little bit of color here. Some bronze, some rust, just to add some detail to it. So I guess I should try to swap hands. Again, I was pointing out the pointing finger. I told you not to come to the castle at night. Turn back. No. If you don't want to use the spear, there's also the sword. How does this fit? Oh yeah, like a dream. Also comes with a shield, and this brings in a patina color. Oh yeah, I like this. Then there's this bandolier, again with the buckles and the loop with some silver painted on both sides, I guess to hold the sword. Is there a right way to do this? I'm doing it like this. That's the wrong way to do it because check out the leather. It won't lay flat. You put the thinner part up top, it lays right on the shoulder, and then the bottom conforms right to the rib cage like a glove or a bandolier around ribs. And now it doesn't look so naked. So covered up with the strap. From what I've heard, swappability is common. They're made to interchange parts between the figures, like the knight's shoulder pads fit into the holes in the skeleton's back. And it adds a little bit of flair to it. And then the skeleton's head fits on the knight's body. He got me, boys. Killed me. With a sword. Size-wise, the knight stands at about 6 3/4, while the skeleton stands at about 6 13/16. Pretty standard Mythic Legion scale, which is slightly larger than your regular Marvel Legends figure, unless you bring in a biggin. But then scales smaller than McFarlane's DC Multiverse figures. So it's somewhere in between, because it's also slightly larger than the 1/12 Fresh Monkey Fiction Naughty or Nice collection. Smaller than NECA's Dungeons & Dragons. Larger than bigger Hasbro G.I. Joe Classified Series figures. Smaller than Mattel Masters of the Universe Masterverse, larger than the Foosh Bone Brawler skeleton. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It's Mythic Legions doing Mythic Legions things in Mythic Legions scale. I gotta admit, for my first deep dive into this line, I am damn impressed. And yeah, I am late to the party, getting in after some articulation improvements and such, but that just proves that this is the perfect jumping on point for people like me. People who have been intimidated by Mythic Legions all this time because of the depth and all the reused parts and everything. There is so much out there. But you give new collectors a visible starting point and they're more likely to jump in. So yeah, call me fresh meat, call me noob, whatever. That's okay, because we were all noobs at some point with every toy line. We all have our starting points, and God dang it, I sure needed something else to collect. But seriously, these are good. These are real good.